Hey guys, good morning. Happy Tuesday. It's Daryl here. It's very early, 3 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. I've been up pretty much all night. I came across a couple stories and I have not been able to stop looking into them. Marque, Texas. Joshua Feast, a 22-year-old African-American man, no longer with us. Hit in the back while fleeing. Virginia Beach, Jamar, Mackey, sitting with his family at the mall, Christmas shopping, eating lunch, dinner in front of him, his fiance, his newborn, and his 13-year-old son. An officer comes up behind him, no explanation, handcuffs him, no mask on. This officer, no mask, face just inches away from Mr. Jamar Mackey's face. Mr. Jamar had his face mask pulled down to eat. The officer, no mask. Breaking the law himself right there. No explanation. Handcuffs Mr. Mackey. The fiance is confused, starts filming. Perp walks Mr. Mackey out of the mall in front of his family, in front of everybody, people that know him. His son, 13-year-old son, I'm sure his son's people that go to school with his kid, his friends are watching. Hey, I saw your dad perp walked out of the mall the other day. What do you do? Gets out into the parking lot, mistaken identity, and the officer apologizes. I'm so sorry. Two cases here. Jamar Mackey, Virginia Beach. Joshua Feast, Marque, Texas. Two very different outcomes, too. Mr. Feast can't tell any side of his story. He can't talk about it because he's no longer with us. Hit in the back while fleeing. Even more troubling with Mr. Feast is the officer in this incident in Texas had already resigned in 2013 from a very troubling incident involving another African-American man and his partner, where he assaulted an African-American man, held his head underwater, and he resigned a few months later. Gets hired by Marque, Texas. And then this happens to Joshua Feast while he was fleeing. Now, these are two different men, Joshua Feast and Jamar Mackey. They're two different men, two different lives. Different police officers. One police officer with a history, a troubling history in Texas. The other police officer in Virginia Beach apologizes. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I made a mistake. So I'm looking at both these cases here. And I'll be honest with you, the one with Jamar Mackey, even though there's less physical damage to Mr. Mackey, it infuriates me beyond belief. The not wearing a mask and the way he just comes up behind Mr. Mackey and handcuffs him in front of his family and walks him out of the mall. And then apologizes, though. So it makes it all better. It's all better. Forgiven. It's okay. I made a mistake. Oh, well. His family's never gonna forget that. His 13. I think most about his 13-year-old son, because by 13 I had already lost my father. But with 13, your friends are extremely important to you. And I'm thinking about how this kid's gonna talk to his friends in the mall. The mall was the place where we went. So he guaranteed this mall was filled with this kid's friends, and his father gets perp walked out of the mall. For no reason. Mistaken identity, sorry. Now look at both of these cases. What do they have in common? I think what they have both in common is both Mr. Mackey, Jamar Mackey in Virginia Beach, and Joshua Feast in Marque, Texas, were judged to be guilty. We're looked at as you're guilty. Guilty. In Texas, it certainly ended up like the officer believed he was guilty, and he carried out his sentence right there. Virginia Beach, the officer didn't even feel the need to explain. Just handcuffed him and took him out. Guilty. Don't even need to ask any questions. I don't even need to ask your name. No questions. Don't need to ask if you even have any credit cards, because that's what it was about. No questions. I'm just going to handcuff you, take you away in front of your family, and take you out in the parking lot. Guilty. You're guilty. I don't even need to talk to you. I don't even need to ask your name. You're guilty. Both these cases tick me off. And people wonder why Black Lives Matter. Why don't all lives matter? Are all lives treated equally? I'll bring up Michigan State House, AR-15s, Portland, Oregon. The incident where this man was pulled over and there was something on the seat of his car. And he said, you know what? I'll do this to you. He says this to the officer and then drives away. I see two different treatments of two different races of people. One, Caucasians, are given the benefit of the doubt. Hey, I don't want to infringe your rights, even though you got that sitting right on the front seat, even though you got that strapped right to your chest, and they're threatening me. I don't want to infringe your rights. You better go on your way. But the African-American men, oh, you don't even need to talk to them. Don't need to ask any names. Guilty. You're guilty. The handcuffs, guilty. Two very different treatments here. That's why. Of course, all lives are important. But there's definitely different treatment here. Both Jamar Mackey in Virginia Beach shitting with his family Christmas shopping. Because he had dreadlocks, he had a red shirt on, and he was with a child. Guilty. You look like somebody. No questions. We don't need to ask no questions here. We're just going to handcuff you. No mask on the officer. The officer is breaking ordinances and laws right there. The officer is endangering Mr. Mackey by his own indifference to his own ordinances right there by not wearing a mask. He's endangering Mr. Mackey's life and his family's life. Oh, sorry. Just made a mistake. And Joshua Feast. And the troubling thing is the response from the investigators in Marque, Texas. Because they have a whole different story. That Mr. Feast was heading towards the officers. Well, it's pretty hard to get hit in the back when you're running at the officers. And the video shows you running away, running hard and fast in the other direction. And all the eyewitnesses say that he was running away. Wow. Two different stories there. But hey, he was guilty. Guilty and carried out the sentence. Sentenced right on the spot. Bam. Guilty. I'll talk more about these. I'm angry. I'm very angry. And I'm extremely angry about both of them. Although I'm hesitant to say that Mr. Mackey's case in Virginia Beach being handcuffed from his family really just sets me off. Even though the loss of life in Texas. And people wonder why this call to reform policing. And we have a president sequestered in the White House, not concerned with any of this anymore. All he's concerned about is himself staying in power. Law and order. Law and order. There's your law and order. Cop not wearing a mask, taking away the father of the family, no questions asked. Guilty. And Mr. Feast, sentenced on the spot. Law and order, man. All right, I'll be back later with another video.